Hey, this is Daniel Grove, and I just released a new Sci-Fi Spaceship Kitbash set, and it is huge. It has over 250 pieces for you to make custom spaceships, and just look at it. It's beautiful. Just look at it. Would you just look at it? Just look at it. These renders, by the way, were done in Eevee. We'll get to that later. So this Kitbash does cost $20, but even if you're not going to buy this, please watch this video because I'm going to share some really great tips for kitbashing, and you might just learn a thing or two. So if you like to quickly build spaceships or make space scenes without spending hours and hours making stuff and not being happy with it, this is a product for you because I've made a whole bunch of pieces that are perfect for building a bunch of different styles of ships, superstructures, space stations, or satellites. It's really up to you what you make. And you can use your renders and designs commercially. Did I mention this is Eevee friendly? That just still blows my mind because I literally never use Eevee. I've never been satisfied with how it looks until this project. I really pushed myself to try it again and try to do some fast and efficient space renders, and boy howdy was I surprised. I can't get enough of these animations and I want to make more. And there will be a tutorial coming soon about how to do space renders just like these in Eevee. So what's included? Like I said, over 250 different meshes, large and small, everything in between, sensors, plates, antennas, windows, cockpits, gravity rings, tanks, engines, and even entire spaceship hulls that have been pre-designed to get your creativity kick-started into making spaceships faster and quicker. And just look at these materials. They are beautiful. I made them myself custom within Blender and turned them into functional PBR maps. And in the material setups that I've created, they are totally tweakable with tons of really great stuff to make these materials your own. The PBR textures themselves are really just a starting point for an incredible material that you can stick on anything to make look cool within a few clicks. Now these were made in Blender 3.4, and with the recent changes to the color mix node, I highly advise you use this in the latest versions. Now as you can see in the outliner, this is a highly organized kitbash. I mean, all of mine are, but now I've got colors. Colors are cool. And this organization is also mirrored in the asset browser. As you can see, these collections on the right are mimicked by catalogs on the left. Very easy to use if you prefer to build from the asset browser. We'll get to how to kitbash efficiently later. Now, as you can see, these meshes are very high quality. This is not a low poly product at all, and I'm sorry if your computer can't handle it. I will share some tips in this video on how to deal efficiently with high poly assets so that your computer won't have a Chernobyl meltdown, but your renders will still look good. But I like to make my parts high poly so that you can get in close and your renders will still look awesome. I don't like to make basic spaceship shapes and just slap a displacement texture or a bump map on it and say it's a really cool spaceship piece. I get in there close and design the little pieces that in my mind have structural integrity and design choices that are made with science in mind. So if you want your spaceships to look awesome far away and up close, then this is the kit for you. Included in the product purchase is another blend file that contains these 5 example ships that I made and used in the animations you saw earlier. This is just to give you an example of how you can combine some parts and honestly just make the building process much more efficient and fun, because that's what it's all about for me, is having fun and being creative. And yes, a starry background is procedural and included as well. All right, let's get to some tips on how to use this thing practically once you've downloaded the file. You might want to choose to make the original blend file read only so that you don't accidentally save over it and mess it up. Now to do that, go to the folder where you have the blend file downloaded. Now this is mine, so it looks a little different than yours, but right click on the Sci-Fi Spaceships Kitbash Vol.3, go down to Properties. This is Windows, obviously, and check read only, and then apply and OK. Now, if you build a ship over here or mess with the textures and accidentally hit save, Control S, it won't overwrite the original file, and that way you can't screw up the original. Instead, we can use Append or the asset browser to bring these pieces that you love so much into a new project and build that way. Let me show you how to do that. I'm going to start a new project, don't save changes, and I'm going to use the append method to bring in some parts, and then I'll build a ship in the new Blender project. So File, Append. Now I'm going to find my Sci-Fi Kitbash Vol.3, and then I'm going to find the original main file. There it is, Vol.3, Append. Now here we are inside the blend file. I'm going to go into collections, and I'm going to bring in a whole collection of pieces. I'm going to do chunks, engines, and ship bodies. Append. And now in my new blend file, I have all those collections. If your mouse is over the outliner, you can hit the minus button on your numpad to zoom out or collapse objects, and hit the plus button to expand everything. That's just a little quick keyboard shortcut there to navigate really big, busy projects. And they are in place to how they were in my original file, which is cool. I would now at this point press the letter A to select all, G to move, and move them over here out of the way. And I like to build stuff at the 0 point, which is in the center of our grid. So I could maybe grab, that piece, hold shift and select that. I'll hold shift and select that piece. And this one, I'm still holding shift, by the way. And then let's grab some engines to throw on here. I like that one. I like all of them. And now I've got my pieces I want. Shift D to duplicate. See, we've got copies here. We can just move parts over here and just start building that way. So of course my center hole is going to be in the middle. So select it and press Alt G. Let me move that thing out of there. Select this, Alt G to move that into the middle. With my move tool selected, I can move that up there. Maybe I'm going to scale it up, but I don't want to scale on the 3D cursor there. That's an annoying default I need to change. So scale on the individual origin like so. Let's set that to the middle, bring this up. Let's go to object mode so it's a little bit easier to see. There we go. And by the way, in object mode, if you click in your little drop down, I suggest you turn on cavity and play with these guys so that you get just a little bit added detail so that your mind can just more easily separate things. It looks nice, but it helps me visually know what is going where. Here's another cool trick for kit bashing. With a part selected, if you want it to be duplicated around a mesh, instead of manually duplicating and flipping, we're going to use the mirror modifier. So go to the modifiers tab, click on mirror right in the middle, and then do mirror object based on a central object you know is in the central axis. And now you can turn on and off these different axes to mirror it on. So even if I scale it or move it, the mirrored copies will always follow it and they stay perfectly centered based on the center point of this. Assuming the center point is accurate, which of course mine are, you're good to go. Okay, let's throw a few more pieces on here. I didn't plan on actually building a ship for this video, but you know what? Why not? Cool. Got this chunk. Oh, I know that this will go perfectly up front as kind of a cap for these things. Now, my pieces are made with universality and flexibility in mind. What that means is there is no right scale for these things. This could be as big as a door or it could be as big as a school bus. And I kind of made stuff very vague with no identifying things like a doorknob or a keypad, where it'll basically trap that part to be that scale. I like my stuff to be used in various ways. So you won't be trapped into one, way of doing things. We got our two engines over here. Let's reset them to 0 with Alt G, move them to the back. Let me think. Yeah, I'll leave this to the back. Let's make 2 of these engines on the side here. Period on your numpad, by the way, will zoom into and center your selected object. Very handy. Let's do that mirroring trick again. Mirror, select the central object, and let's do across the y-axis. Awesome. We could even move this up and do Z. Now we are adding to polygons, so don't get crazy if your computer can't handle it. But that looks pretty sweet to me. Now this little guy, let's make it not so little. Let's make it really huge and just shove it into the ship right there. No one has to know that it's covering up a bunch of stuff. Looks awesome to me. I like it. And there we go. We've got a super quick and dirty build of a spaceship. Let's change these materials just to show you how cool they are. This is hull 1, which just looks great on everything. Let's change it to one of the other PBR textures that I made. But looky here, we only have 2 materials in this project. That's okay. Let's go back to File and Append. And let's go up 1, go to Materials, and let's select all of the super panels. That's what I called them. 1 through 5. There we go. Now, let's do super panels 1. We can copy this material to the other pieces by selecting the one you like first, and then B for box select, and now Control L for link, and go down to materials. So that copies the material from your active one to the others that are also selected. See, this is a brighter orange around this bottom piece. These are a darker orange. That means this is like the prime one, and it moves it over. Let's do that. Let's look at the other materials. Super panels 2, super panels 3. And these are not just different color variations of the same texture images. No, they are not. They are completely different texture images with different styles, different features, different everything, including height maps, edge maps, lines, random colors for each panel, And you can use any of those as a roughness map or metallic map. All right, let's look at number 4. I only added this color element to these materials just to kind of help you differentiate which material is which. Number 5, which is really cool because it has some emissions in there, which again, you can totally do in the other materials by just connecting the line texture into the emissions. Man, this looks so cool. I love that because these lines are at the very bottom of each bump map ridge. It's like inset energy lines that are running through the ship, and it looks so sweet. Let's switch over to Eevee. Still looks great. A little bit less shiny, but that's just kind of how Eevee works. You can, of course, adjust that to compensate. Okay, so that is the append method. The other method of building ships is by using the asset browser. So I'm going to select this amazing ship that I actually really like and just delete it, because sometimes that's what you got to do as an artist. So let's expand this down and go to asset browser. I'm going to go to the library that contains all my products. And then I'm going to go down to the catalog that contains the Sci-Fi Spaceship Kitbash Vol.3. Here we go. All right, so let's go to long pieces. Sometimes it takes a second for the thumbnails to come up. There we go. I'm going to make them large. Awesome. Let's drag and drop. This is the fun part about the asset browser, is that it really speeds things up. You can just drag and drop stuff wherever you want them. And now we would start basically doing the same thing we did earlier with moving things around, Alt-G to get it in the center. You can overlap stuff because I made things with that purpose in mind. And do not feel constrained to the direction that my pieces were made in. You can flip things 90 degrees. You can flip them backwards. That's all part of the creative process to finding something that you love. I'm going to do my mirror trick here to put an engine on the bottom. Because you know what? This is a spacefaring vessel. Why should we be constrained to a horizontal orientation for everything? Cool. We got some little stabilization thrusters here. Gonna line it up with those panels. Do my mirror trick. And then we can also use another modifier. Let's move this up higher. And let's use another modifier on top of that, which is the array modifier. And let's make it go backwards. So I think that is, let's do -5. A little bit less. You can adjust it like that. Cool. Put some cool gas tanks on the top, right where a fighter could totally shoot it and blow it up. Just nice and vulnerable. And wings, something that a normal spaceship would never need because we don't have air or aerodynamics to deal with. But, at the ends of wings, you can put functional things like sensor arrays, stabilization thrusters, and of course, heat exhaust to get rid of extra thermal energy that would otherwise destroy your ship. Just some food for thought. Really quick build. It's a nice start to something. All right, let's talk about optimization, because if I select this object and enable or turn on my statistics here, go into edit mode, we can see there are 1,500 vertices or 1,400 faces. And that is only with this quarter. This thing is quadrupled. So there is like 5,600 faces with just this central object right here. So let's just say your laptop is working on an Intel Pentium processor from the early 90s and you've got 256 kilobytes of RAM and you just can't handle these ships. Well, here's a few tricks to help you speed things up. Select your object that you want to optimize, go to the modifiers tab and add the decimate modifier. Let's keep collapse selected and turn your ratio down to something pretty low, like usually 0.1. Things are still recognizable as far as shape. Some things get a little bit funny with the UV maps and the detail pieces. But look, now the face count is down from, 14,000 for just this quarter, down here, look, 9,000. Let's do 0.05. Get even smaller. It looks pretty ugly, but look, we're down to 4,000 faces. So this is not what you want to keep on when you're rendering, of course. So turn off your rendering button there so that when you render this, it'll look normal full quality. And yeah, your computer's going to have to, do some heavy lifting, but at least during the building process, you can be more efficient and not have a lagging computer. Just be sure to put your laptop under running water to keep it cool while you render. Another thing to make your projects more efficient is to disable collections in your viewport that are not actually being used. So disabling that with the monitor, actually, I believe it saves RAM and I guess processor power because it's not calculating those vertices anymore. If you don't have that monitor button, go to your little filter button and turn on monitor. I also suggest turning on your selection one so that you can make things not selectable in case you want to stop accidentally selecting stuff. Okay, last part of the video is I want to encourage you guys to try new things when you're kit bashing. I sent my beta version of this product out to a few of my friends to have them build and play with it and give me some feedback and basically just roast me and tell me everything I did wrong. And Wilbert Sweet showed me a cool trick that I have never done, which is using warping modifiers on meshes to give new shapes and life to the parts that I've already made. So I'm going to go to the chunks, and I'm going to use the chunk that he actually played with a lot of, which is this cool looking thing. One of my favorite pieces I've made. This bump map looks pretty gnarly, by the way. So I'm just going to the materials and turn it down a little bit. There we go. So go to your modifiers tab, and let's try a few different modifiers here. Let's try the simple deform. Wow, not what I had in mind. Let's try bend. Here we go. This is cool. We can control the angle of the bend and give some interesting shape. We could totally rotate this around a center point and make a really cool ring shape for a gravity ring or a habitat or something with a space station on it. And I'm actually loving that curved. That looks super cool. Let's try some different directions. Let's do the Y. That could be interesting, wrapping it this way. And X. That's kind of cool. Now, when you're bending stuff like this, it does rely on the geometry to basically give it curvature. So if there's not a lot of geometry in a certain part, it won't get curved. It'll just get moved and look weird. Like, watch this. If I do this all the way out, I can see there's something in here that's totally flat and is not getting bent. That's just how it works. But, some people don't really care about geometry. I mean, I don't care about geometry, but some people care even less than me. And they would totally throw this onto a spaceship and not care about it. Let's try taper. What does taper do? It squeezes at one side and not the other. This could be great on the side of a spaceship, or flip it, make it the top, like that. And then there's stretch. What does stretch do? Interesting. Top and bottom. Wow. Now you have a building. I love it. I never would have thought my spaceship piece could make a decent building part. And there you have it. Doing this makes it look like a little escape pod. Adds a jet on the back and boom, you got a little mini ship flying through space. Okay, let's try another modifier here. If we add the wireframe modifier, it's going to turn everything into a skeleton, which looks really cool. If you want to do like a design schematic render, totally put a wireframe on stuff and it could look phenomenal. It might look like crap, but this one looks pretty cool. You can also turn something into more of like a superstructure kind of thing with like, wireframe skeleton and put some stuff in the middle like it's being built, like a large space station or habitat. Especially if you throw some lights in the middle, it'll really bring it to life. And lastly, you can use the array modifier to make things longer, fill up more space, or turn it into a ring. Let me show you how to do that. I've got one of my tube pieces here, which can be used in a variety of ways, but I'm going to turn this into a rotating gravity ring. So I've already got an array modifier, which is copying this initial mesh and making it copies out on the x-axis. I can control how many by turning up the count. Let's go to 20. Now I'm going to make a circle curve to basically bend this around to turn it into a ring. So to do that, press Shift A, curve, and go to the circle on top, which is this one. There we go. I'm going to put it in the middle by pressing Alt G and S to scale it up. Now select your tube piece, go to curve modifier, and in your curve object, I'm going to select that Bezier curve, and there we go. It's already working. Now this, I got lucky because the deform axis is on X, the thing was already pointing on the Y axis, and it's just spinning it around perfectly. We do need a few more copies, so we can turn this up, or we can turn this down and scale up the piece to make it larger, but also to connect it with itself. So let's zoom in here, make sure it's all connected by S for scale, holding Shift, and there you go. Good enough for me. And there you go. You got a spinning gravity ring. If you do want to spin it though, you have to animate it as well as the Bezier curve. All right, next let's talk about tweaking the materials. So I did my best to make a great kind of general use, like a starting place texture, which is great. You can just slap it on stuff and render it and it'll look fine. But there's a lot of room for improvement and customization that is totally up to you. So let's get a decent angle where you can see some nice light glinting, and let's go to the shader editor and I'll show you how to customize this stuff. And basically how I laid out all the materials are pretty similar as far as the super panels go. So here we are in the shader editor. Let me try to make this big so you guys can see this. I have a habit of not zooming in close enough. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so over here is the main stuff. This is really what matters. This is all the final stuff where everything gets plugged into. And as you can see, it's pretty simple. I have color data, roughness data, and normals data. You can do more. You can do metallic, you can do specular, you can do transparent and alpha if you want emissions, but this one is just bare bones. The whole one is the most general use material. So let's separate this into layers. We have the color stuff, which is up top. As you can tell, it's plugged into the color. Stuff in the middle is for the roughness, and on the bottom is, you guessed it, for the bump map and or the normals map. Actually both in many cases. So if you zoom into the top, I guess we can call it layer of the color data, we can customize stuff. So this very first A right here, this is actually the base color, the starting color. So if you want there to be a base color for, a paint job for your ship, you can give a color right there. Now, after that color is started with A, everything starts getting layered on top with a bunch of mixed nodes. First, we have the ambient occlusion, which works a little bit different in EV. It's a little bit more pronounced and noticeable in cycles. But after that, we've got a mix for this combination of noises right here to add some irregularities. So if we turn it all the way up, we get a lot of noise. You can actually see it right there in the reflections. Next, we're overlaying random per island color to give each polygon group a different color or shade. Then we have another mix for the overlay random image texture. Let me zoom in close to these so you can see what this does. And finally, we have a color overlay, which you can add a color on top. Next, we have our roughness layer, which starts all the way back here with some noise getting mixed by this screen mix, and then it goes over here to a crossfade. So the crossfades are a really cool node group that I've made. Honestly, I've never seen anyone else do this, but I think it's genius because you can add a texture on top of another texture using screen or multiply with just one slider. If you go positive above 0, it's using screen. If you go below, it's using multiply to make things darker. If you use 0, it's doing nothing. Now the starting value is actually, in this case, because we're going to roughness, the starting roughness of the whole thing. So if you want your ship to start off super shiny, go down to 0, which is completely like wet glass reflective. And then you can add stuff on top of that slowly to give it less shiny. Or if you want to do the opposite, you can start at 1, which is completely not shiny or completely rough. And then you can take things away by using a negative value. In this case, we're crossfading noise on top of the starting value because it's labeled noise. Over here, we've got random mix, which is taking texture from this random face color texture, and we're doing the crossfade now on top of this. So we can add to it or take it away. And then it gets plugged into roughness. And then lastly, down here, we've got a similar chain of textures. This one's just pretty simple. We've got a height map, going to a color ramp, which allows you to customize things, and of course going into a bump node. If you don't like the look of bump maps, that's okay, just turn it down to 0 and you'll get a flat surface, although there are a lot of actual geometry here, so you still get some nice ridges and shapes. Honestly, this looks pretty good without any bump map. Let's change this to my favorite super panels texture, which is number 5. I'm going to select this one first, box select the other pieces, press Ctrl L and link the material. There we go. And I'm going to show you what the super panel material setup looks like. It's pretty similar. It's got the same kind of design idea. There might be a little bit more added to it. But if you just follow these chains, all of this stuff is going to the color, all this stuff is going to roughness, and all this stuff down here is the normals and bump. Now I do have this really cool node group that I've created, which I call the noise machine. This basically is a fancy way of blending between two different noises, the Musgrave and the noise texture from A to B. I'm going to actually preview this by Control-Shift clicking it so we can see what this noise looks like on an actual shape. If we go A, we've got Musgrave, B is noise texture, but wait, there's more. You can easily control the scale of either noise here. You can control the roughness or smoothness of it. And my favorite is the grit, which basically destroys the normals of the noise with a different noise. And that really adds a nice level of grit and noise and just destruction to that noise texture that makes it mostly unrecognizable and adds a lot of nice detail. If I go to B, which is the noise texture node, and play with that grit, it looks almost like a painting or dirty rusted metal. I think it looks awesome. And at the bottom here, you can control the values. So this is the black point, the white point. You can control the contrast and the values coming out of here. Let's say if it's going to a roughness map, this stuff is really handy right here. And then we can turn up invert to flip-flop it upside down. So that's in the mixed chain here, where you can add it or take it away to your texture. And the noise machine output is of course going to yet another crossfade, which is a final one before the roughness input. And you can use this to take away from the roughness or add to it. But I want to put it at -1 so that where the noise is darkest, there's going to be shinier spots, giving a nice imperfection to the metal surface. This noise machine also is channeled down into the bump map. If you want to add like destruction and decay onto your metal, you can do that as well, either up or down with a negative value. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned some great tricks, and please go purchase this Kitbash because it is just so cool. And when you do and make some amazing renders that blow your mind and possibly melt your computer, please send me your renders to my email down below. I really enjoy seeing all of you guys' renders and stuff that I never thought of making in the ways that you make them. It's really great seeing y'all's renders. So thanks for watching and have a great week.